The easiest way to hide your true worth is to let the world believe you have none. Those words had echoed inside Nia Brooks's mind for years, becoming less of a memory and more of a quiet promise she made to herself every morning before stepping outside. While countless people spent hours trying to stand out in New York City, Nia carefully mastered the opposite. She selected an oversized gray sweater that had faded from countless washes, a pair of simple blue jeans, comfortable sneakers with visible signs of wear, and tied her natural curls beneath a plain knit cap. Nothing about her appearance invited admiration. Nothing suggested confidence or success. That was exactly the point. Long ago she had learned that appearances attracted attention, but character revealed truth. As the first rays of sunlight reflected against the towering glass buildings of Manhattan's financial district, thousands of professionals hurried toward their offices carrying expensive coffee cups, designer briefcases, and endless ambition. Nia blended naturally into the moving crowd. She carried a weathered canvas tote filled with notebooks for the community education center where she volunteered every afternoon. Inside those notebooks were business ideas from struggling entrepreneurs, handwritten goals from single parents hoping to open neighborhood shops, and dreams that many wealthy investors would dismiss without a second glance. She smiled quietly as she walked because she believed hope did not require expensive clothing. Across the busy avenue, a sleek black luxury sedan rolled slowly toward a red traffic light. Inside sat Ethan Carter, founder and chief executive officer of one of New York's most respected investment firms. At 42 years old, he had built a reputation for recognizing opportunities where everyone else saw ordinary circumstances. Endless meetings, billion-dollar negotiations, and public recognition had sharpened his instincts until they became almost impossible to ignore. As his driver stopped at the intersection, Ethan absent-mindedly looked through the passenger side window, expecting nothing more than another anonymous morning in the city. Instead, his attention settled on a woman standing patiently beside the crosswalk. She was dressed more simply than almost everyone around her, yet she carried herself with remarkable calm. She was not looking at her reflection in nearby windows. She was not comparing herself to anyone passing by. While others hurried with anxious expressions, she paused to help an elderly man gather papers scattered by a sudden gust of wind. She smiled warmly, handed every page back with genuine kindness, and continued walking before he could even finish thanking her. Ethan frowned slightly, not out of disapproval but curiosity. Something about her quiet confidence felt strangely unforgettable. Success had taught him that confidence usually announced itself loudly. This woman's confidence almost seemed determined to remain invisible. The traffic light turned green, but Ethan continued watching until the crowd slowly carried her beyond his view. For reasons he could not explain, the image remained in his thoughts long after the car moved forward. Nia never noticed the luxury sedan. She simply continued toward the subway entrance, believing she had passed another ordinary morning like countless others before it. Neither of them realized that one brief glance through a car window had already changed the direction of two completely different lives. Because sometimes destiny does not arrive with applause. Sometimes it quietly waits at a red light, disguised as an ordinary stranger the entire world has chosen not to see. Nia Brooks arrived at the community education center just before noon, placing her weathered canvas tote on a long wooden table where several aspiring entrepreneurs were already waiting with notebooks and hopeful expressions. She greeted each person by name, listened carefully to every question, and encouraged every idea with the same quiet respect, whether it came from a recent college graduate or a retired factory worker searching for a second chance. No one inside the building cared about the faded sweater she wore or the worn sneakers on her feet. They knew her for something much more valuable. She had an uncommon ability to help people believe in themselves when the rest of the world had already decided they would never succeed. Across the city, Ethan Carter found himself distracted throughout a series of executive meetings. Charts filled enormous presentation screens, analysts discussed market trends, and board members debated future investments. Yet his thoughts repeatedly returned to the woman he had seen through the car window earlier that morning. He could not explain why such an ordinary encounter refused to disappear from his mind. Before the final meeting ended, He quietly asked his assistant to arrange a visit to several neighborhood organizations the company had previously considered supporting. It sounded like a routine business decision, but even he understood that curiosity had become the real reason. Late that afternoon, Ethan arrived at the education center accompanied by only one member of his staff instead of the usual team of executives and photographers. He preferred to observe without attracting unnecessary attention. As he stepped inside, he immediately recognized Nia standing near a whiteboard covered with handwritten business plans. She was encouraging a young mother who dreamed of opening a neighborhood bakery, patiently explaining how small daily progress often mattered more than perfect circumstances. Her words carried warmth without exaggeration and confidence without pride. Ethan remained quietly in the back of the room, watching how every person naturally trusted her. She never tried to impress anyone. She simply listened, smiled, and offered practical advice that made complicated problems feel possible to solve. When the workshop concluded, several participants thanked her before leaving with renewed determination. Nia began collecting notebooks and arranging chairs, unaware that Ethan had been observing every moment. Finally, their eyes met. She recognized him only as another well-dressed visitor and greeted him with the same sincere smile she offered everyone else. Ethan introduced himself politely without mentioning his reputation or company. Instead of appearing impressed, Nia simply thanked him for visiting and asked whether he would like to learn about the center's programs. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, yet Ethan noticed something unusual. She never asked about his wealth, influence, or business connections. She spoke only about opportunity, education, and helping people build stable futures through honest work. Before leaving, Ethan accepted a simple brochure she handed him. It was printed on inexpensive paper, but every page reflected genuine purpose. As he returned to his car, he realized he had spent years evaluating companies by financial statements and executives by confidence, yet this woman measured success by lives quietly changed. Watching the center disappear in the rearview mirror, Ethan understood that the curiosity sparked by a single glance had become something far more difficult to ignore, because for the first time in many years, someone had captured his attention without making the slightest effort to do so. Nia Brooks locked the doors of the Community Education Center after the last workshop ended, and began her familiar walk toward the subway station as the cool evening air settled over Manhattan. The city sparkled with polished office towers and glowing restaurant windows, but she rarely noticed the luxury surrounding her. Her attention stayed on the handwritten notes she carried inside her canvas tote, where every page represented someone who still believed tomorrow could become better than today. A passing storefront reflected her oversized sweater and simple cap. She paused for only a second before continuing forward with a quiet smile. Years ago, she would have worried about how strangers judged her appearance. Now she considered it a gentle filter that revealed something far more valuable than admiration. Earlier in her life, compliments had often arrived carrying hidden expectations. Attractive opportunities became invitations with conditions. Friendly conversations became attempts to take advantage of her generosity. Even professional offers sometimes depended more upon appearance than ability. Those experiences never made her bitter, but they taught her a lesson she refused to forget. When she stopped trying to impress people, she finally discovered who genuinely respected her. Across town, Ethan Carter stood beside the wide windows of his office overlooking the evening skyline, holding the simple brochure Nia had handed him that afternoon. The paper itself was inexpensive, the photographs modest, and the design completely ordinary. Yet every page described measurable results instead of empty promises. Families had opened small businesses. Veterans had learned new careers. Parents had received financial education. Young entrepreneurs had found mentors willing to believe in them before success arrived. Ethan quietly admired that every achievement highlighted the community rather than the organization itself. He opened his laptop and searched for additional information about the education center. Public records confirmed its remarkable impact despite operating on a limited budget. More surprising was the complete absence of publicity surrounding Nia herself. She rarely appeared in interviews, accepted almost no public recognition, and consistently redirected attention toward the people she served. Ethan leaned back thoughtfully. In a world where many individuals competed endlessly for visibility, she seemed determined to disappear behind the success of others. The following morning, he rearranged part of his schedule without announcing the reason. Instead of sending representatives, he personally visited several neighborhood businesses mentioned in the brochure. A small bakery owner spoke gratefully about the guidance that had transformed a family recipe into a thriving storefront. A retired mechanic proudly described how Nia had helped him organize his finances before opening a repair shop. A young woman operating a flower boutique smiled as she explained that Nia never asked for recognition, only for a promise that one day she would help someone else. Every conversation sounded different, yet one truth remained constant. Nia quietly changed lives without expecting applause. As Ethan returned to his car, he realized that the carefully constructed image she presented to the world had never been about hiding insecurity. It was a deliberate choice rooted in wisdom earned through disappointment. She had learned that genuine respect appeared only after appearance stopped becoming the center of attention. Looking through the windshield toward another busy Manhattan intersection, Ethan understood that he was no longer interested in discovering why Nia dressed so simply. He wanted to understand the remarkable woman who had found lasting confidence by asking the world to overlook everything except the person she truly was. 2 days later, Ethan Carter received an invitation to attend the annual Community Partnership Reception, a gathering where nonprofit organizations presented their work to business leaders searching for meaningful investment opportunities. The event was held inside one of Manhattan's most respected cultural centers, where polished marble floors, elegant chandeliers, and carefully arranged displays reflected both generosity and prestige. Ethan accepted immediately, although he admitted only to himself that his decision had less to do with corporate philanthropy than with the possibility of seeing Nia Brooks again. As guests arrived wearing tailored suits and elegant evening attire, conversations filled the grand hall with confident laughter and ambitious networking. Nia entered quietly through a side entrance carrying a folder filled with reports about the education center. She wore the same modest style she had chosen for years, a simple gray sweater beneath a neat dark jacket, practical shoes, and minimal accessories. Her appearance attracted little attention among the crowd, exactly as she expected. She preferred allowing the work to speak louder than clothing ever could. While organizing brochures at the community exhibit, she remained focused on answering questions from anyone genuinely interested in helping local families build stronger futures. Across the room, a sophisticated social entrepreneur named Victoria Lang noticed Nia almost immediately. Victoria had spent years cultivating influence among executives and donors through carefully crafted appearances and polished public presentations. Seeing someone dressed so simply inside such an exclusive gathering, she quietly assumed Nia had wandered into an event beyond her place. With several guests standing nearby, Victoria smiled politely but allowed unmistakable condescension to enter her voice. She suggested that volunteers should remain behind the exhibit tables while experienced professionals handled conversations with major investors. Several people exchanged uncertain glances, unwilling to challenge the awkward remark. Nia did not react with embarrassment or anger. Instead, she answered with calm courtesy, thanked Victoria for her concern, and continued arranging information for visitors without changing her expression. Her quiet dignity created a silence far more powerful than any argument could have achieved. Ethan had witnessed the entire exchange from only a few steps away. He watched carefully, expecting frustration or defensiveness, yet Nia offered neither. She treated Victoria with the same respect she had shown every participant at the education center. That simple response unsettled Ethan more than any dramatic confrontation could have done. He realized true confidence required no audience and no applause. Moments later, one of the event organizers approached Nia with genuine appreciation, thanking her for the measurable success of the education center and inviting her to present its latest achievements before the evening concluded. Several attendees appeared surprised. Others quickly recognized her name from successful neighborhood initiatives they had quietly supported over the years. Victoria's confident smile faded ever so slightly as she realized the woman she had underestimated was not an assistant or volunteer unfamiliar with the room. She was one of the evening's most respected contributors. Ethan remained thoughtful as applause filled the hall following the announcement. He had entered expecting another charitable event filled with impressive speeches, but instead he had witnessed something far more revealing. The room had judged Nia within seconds because of her appearance, while she had responded with patience, grace, and unwavering composure. As she walked toward the presentation stage carrying nothing more than a folder of community success stories, Ethan understood that the greatest measure of character was not how someone responded to admiration, but how they carried themselves when respect had not yet been offered. As the applause gradually settled, Nia Brooks stepped away from the podium with the same quiet humility she had carried into the room. She thanked every organizer who congratulated her, accepted kind words with genuine gratitude, and gently redirected every compliment toward the volunteers, teachers, and local families who had built the education center together. Ethan Carter watched from across the reception hall, increasingly convinced that she was unlike anyone he had ever met. In the corporate world, success was often measured by visibility and recognition, yet Nia seemed determined to give both away whenever they found her. That contrast lingered in his thoughts long after the formal presentations ended. Instead of leaving with the other executives, Ethan walked toward the community exhibit, where Nia was carefully packing brochures into a small cardboard box. He offered to help without introducing himself as a billionaire or mentioning the influence he carried throughout the city. Nia smiled warmly, handed him a stack of folders, and thanked him as though he were simply another volunteer willing to spare a few minutes. Together they carried supplies toward a service elevator, talking naturally about neighborhood projects, small business education, and the importance of giving people practical opportunities rather than temporary assistance. Ethan listened far more than he spoke. Every answer she gave reflected experience instead of theory, compassion balanced by responsibility, and optimism grounded in realistic expectations. Before they reached the lobby, an elderly couple approached Nia with unmistakable excitement. They proudly explained that their family grocery store had survived because she had helped them organize a business plan during difficult times. Moments later, a young veteran stopped to thank her for encouraging him to complete a certification program that eventually led to stable employment. Then a single mother introduced her teenage daughter, explaining that Nia had inspired the young girl to become the first member of their family to prepare for college. None of these people appeared because cameras were nearby. They had simply recognized someone who had quietly changed the direction of their lives. Ethan noticed that Nia remembered every name, every challenge, and every dream without hesitation. She celebrated each success as though it belonged entirely to the people standing before her. As they finally stepped outside into the cool Manhattan evening, Ethan found himself looking at the city differently. Towering skyscrapers, luxury hotels, and polished office buildings had always represented achievement to him. Yet tonight they seemed less impressive than the simple gratitude he had witnessed inside the reception hall. Nia prepared to carry the remaining box toward the subway entrance, but Ethan politely offered to drive it to the education center instead. She hesitated only briefly before accepting, believing kindness should never be refused when offered sincerely. During the short drive, they spoke about ordinary things, favorite neighborhood restaurants, childhood memories, and the importance of treating every person with equal respect regardless of status. There was no awkward silence because neither felt the need to impress the other. As they arrived at the center, Nia thanked him once again and disappeared inside with the box of materials. Ethan remained seated in the parked car for several quiet moments before asking his driver to leave. For the first time in years, he realized he was no longer curious about the mystery surrounding Nia Brooks. Instead, he admired the remarkable consistency between the woman the world overlooked and the extraordinary difference she quietly made every single day, never realizing that someone had begun seeing her exactly as she truly was. The following week brought unexpected attention to the Community Education Center after several local business journals highlighted its remarkable success. Reporters praised the measurable impact of its programs, while respected civic leaders quietly recommended expanding its reach across New York City. Ethan Carter followed every update with genuine interest, never mentioning to anyone inside his company how closely he had begun observing the center's progress. During a leadership meeting, he proposed creating a new partnership initiative supporting neighborhood organizations with proven results instead of polished marketing campaigns. Most executives welcomed the idea, but one member of the advisory board appeared noticeably uncomfortable. Victoria Lang maintained a pleasant smile, yet she immediately recognized that Ethan's growing interest in community projects threatened years of carefully cultivated influence. She had long positioned herself as the preferred voice connecting wealthy donors with charitable organizations, and the sudden attention surrounding Nia Brooks placed that reputation at risk. Rather than openly opposing the proposal, Victoria chose a quieter strategy. She began suggesting that emotional stories often concealed weak financial management and warned several influential colleagues that small organizations sometimes struggled with professional accountability. Her words contained no direct accusations, only carefully planted doubts designed to grow naturally through conversation. Within days, subtle questions began circulating among potential donors. Some wondered whether the education center could responsibly manage larger grants. Others questioned whether its recent recognition had arrived too quickly. None of the speculation contained evidence, yet uncertainty often traveled faster than truth. Nia remained completely unaware of the growing whispers. She continued arriving early every morning, organizing workshops, reviewing business plans, and encouraging participants with the same steady optimism she had always shown. When volunteers mentioned hearing unusual rumors, she simply reminded them that honest work eventually answered questions better than emotional arguments. She refused to waste valuable time defending a reputation built through years of consistent service. Ethan, however, noticed the sudden change almost immediately. During conversations with investors who had previously praised the center, he sensed hesitation replacing enthusiasm. The shift felt strangely coordinated rather than spontaneous. Curious, he quietly asked his trusted chief of staff to gather publicly available information regarding the recent discussions surrounding community funding. Nothing illegal or dramatic appeared. Instead, a pattern slowly emerged. Similar concerns were being repeated by different people using nearly identical language, as though someone had carefully introduced the same idea into multiple conversations. Ethan did not rush to conclusions, but his instincts reminded him that genuine concerns usually sounded different from person to person. Manufactured doubt often repeated itself with surprising precision. Later that afternoon, Ethan visited the education center without announcing his arrival. Through the open classroom door, he watched Nia patiently helping a group of aspiring entrepreneurs revise their business budgets. She encouraged every participant to prepare for setbacks, remain transparent with future investors, and build trust through consistency rather than promises. Listening quietly from the hallway, Ethan realized the values she taught every day directly contradicted the doubts now spreading across the city. Before leaving, he thanked her for the visit, but chose not to mention the rumors. He wanted facts before creating unnecessary worry. As his car pulled away from the curb, Ethan looked back through the window and understood that someone was attempting to test more than a nonprofit organization. They were testing whether quiet integrity could survive in a world where appearances and carefully crafted narratives often spoke louder than the truth. And for the first time, he felt personally determined to discover who was trying to rewrite Nia Brooks's story before she even knew a new challenge had begun. The rumors continued to circulate quietly, yet inside the community education center nothing changed. Nia Brooks greeted every visitor with the same warm smile, reviewed every business proposal with the same careful attention, and encouraged every student to remain focused on steady progress instead of public opinion. She often reminded them that trust was built one honest decision at a time, and that reputation could never be protected by fear. Her words carried unusual weight because everyone in the room knew she lived exactly as she taught. Meanwhile, Ethan Carter instructed his chief of staff to gather only verified information before making any judgment about the education center. Every financial record available for public review was organized, transparent, and professionally maintained. Every grant had been documented. Every expense matched its intended purpose. The more Ethan examined the facts, the clearer it became that the questions surrounding Nia's organization had not originated from evidence. They had originated from assumption. Instead of announcing his conclusions, Ethan chose to observe one more time. A few days later, he quietly attended an open community event hosted by the education center in a neighborhood park. Families gathered beneath colorful tents while local entrepreneurs displayed handmade products, fresh baked goods, artwork, and small business demonstrations inspired by the center's programs. Children laughed during educational games, musicians performed soft acoustic music, and volunteers welcomed every guest with genuine enthusiasm. Nia moved naturally through the crowd, introducing business owners to potential customers, checking on elderly visitors, encouraging nervous first-time vendors, and making certain every participant felt included. She never remained in one place long enough to receive attention herself because she was constantly helping someone else succeed. Ethan stood near the back of the event wearing casual clothing that attracted little notice. As the afternoon unfolded, something remarkable happened without anyone planning it. One by one, people who had once been students began approaching a small outdoor microphone that organizers had originally prepared for business announcements. A bakery owner thanked Nia for believing in her when banks refused to approve a loan. A military veteran explained that her financial planning classes had helped him rebuild his confidence after returning home. A retired school bus driver described opening a neighborhood bookstore after attending her workshops. A young software developer smiled proudly while explaining that the first business plan Nia reviewed had eventually become a growing technology company employing dozens of local residents. None of the speakers had rehearsed their words. None sought publicity. They simply wanted others to understand why their lives had changed. Ethan watched the audience respond with sincere applause, not because of dramatic speeches, but because every story reflected consistent kindness, practical guidance, and quiet leadership. Nearby, several donors who had recently hesitated because of the circulating rumors exchanged thoughtful glances as they listened. Facts written on paper had been convincing, but living proof carried a different kind of authority. Standing beneath the afternoon sunlight, Ethan realized that Nia would never need to defend herself through arguments because the people she had served had become the strongest evidence of her character. As the gathering slowly came to an end, he understood that the carefully planted doubts surrounding her organization had encountered something impossible to manufacture or imitate. They had encountered years of genuine trust, and for the first time since the rumors began, the truth was no longer speaking through documents alone. It was speaking through grateful lives that no false story could ever erase. The impact of the community gathering spread far beyond the neighborhood during the following week. Videos recorded by visitors began circulating among local business leaders, civic organizations, and charitable foundations. None of the recordings had been professionally produced, yet each captured the same sincere moments of gratitude from people whose lives had changed because of Nia Brooks. The conversations that had once been filled with uncertainty slowly shifted toward admiration, and many donors who had quietly stepped back from supporting the education center now wanted to learn more before making another decision. Ethan Carter recognized that the moment demanded more than private confidence. If misleading assumptions had been allowed to spread publicly, then truth deserved the same opportunity. He instructed his executive team to host the company's annual Community Innovation Forum at the headquarters of Carter Global Investments, inviting nonprofit leaders, neighborhood entrepreneurs, educators, investors, and local officials to discuss practical partnerships that strengthen communities. When the invitation reached the education center, Nia accepted only because she believed the event could create opportunities for the people she served. She spent no time choosing expensive clothing. Instead, she selected a simple but elegant navy business suit borrowed from a close friend, polished her shoes, gathered detailed reports about the center's measurable achievements, and reminded herself that preparation mattered more than appearance. On the morning of the forum, the impressive glass tower overlooking Midtown Manhattan welcomed hundreds of guests. Large presentation screens displayed stories of community development while business executives exchanged ideas with nonprofit leaders. Victoria Lang entered with her usual confidence, convinced that years of influence would continue to shape every important conversation. She was surprised, however, when Ethan personally welcomed Nia at the entrance before greeting several prominent investors waiting nearby. There was nothing dramatic about the gesture, yet everyone present noticed the respect with which he introduced her as a trusted community leader whose work deserved serious attention. Throughout the morning, participants visited exhibition tables featuring innovative local programs. Whenever guests approached the education center's display, Nia answered every question with clear financial reports, measurable outcomes, and practical examples instead of emotional promises. Her honesty impressed experienced investors who appreciated transparency above polished presentations. During the afternoon panel discussion, Ethan addressed the audience with calm confidence. He spoke about the importance of evaluating organizations through consistent results rather than assumptions created by appearance or rumor. Without mentioning anyone directly, he explained that true leadership required the courage to verify facts before accepting popular opinion. He then invited Nia to describe the Education Center's long-term vision for expanding entrepreneurial education across underserved neighborhoods. As she spoke, the audience listened in complete silence. Her words focused entirely on opportunity, responsibility, and sustainable growth. She never defended herself against past speculation because she understood that genuine credibility came from truth consistently demonstrated. When her presentation ended, the room responded with warm, sustained applause. Several respected foundations immediately requested follow-up meetings, while business leaders expressed interest in supporting future programs. Victoria watched quietly as years of carefully planted influence dissolved before undeniable integrity. Ethan looked across the audience and realized that the strongest statement he could make had never required dramatic speeches or personal declarations. By standing publicly beside someone whose character had already been proven through years of faithful service, he had allowed truth to reclaim its rightful place. As the forum concluded and guests continued discussing new partnerships with renewed enthusiasm, neither Ethan nor Nia realized that the greatest opportunity of all was only beginning to unfold, because shared respect had quietly become the foundation for a future neither of them had ever expected. Several months passed, and the promise born during the Community Innovation Forum gradually transformed into something far greater than either Ethan Carter or Nia Brooks had imagined. Together with educators, neighborhood leaders, and responsible business partners, they launched the Community Opportunity Initiative, a citywide program designed to help aspiring entrepreneurs gain practical education, financial guidance, and professional mentorship regardless of their background. Rather than placing their names at the center of the project, they chose to highlight the stories of ordinary people whose determination deserved a chance to flourish. Every new training center, every scholarship, and every small business that opened its doors became another reminder that lasting change always began with someone willing to believe in another person. The education center that once struggled for recognition now welcomed visitors from across the country eager to learn how trust, transparency, and community partnership had created measurable success without sacrificing compassion. Ethan continued visiting quietly whenever his schedule allowed. Sometimes he reviewed business plans with first-time entrepreneurs. Other times he simply listened as participants shared their hopes for the future. The board members who once questioned his growing interest in community work now recognized that these investments produced something far more valuable than financial returns. They strengthened neighborhoods, restored confidence, and created opportunities that continued expanding long after individual programs had ended. Nia remained exactly as she had always been. She still arrived early every morning carrying a canvas tote filled with notebooks, still greeted every visitor by name whenever possible, and still chose simple clothing because she believed character never required decoration. The only difference was that more people now understood the reason behind her quiet choices. They no longer saw simplicity as a sign of limitation. They saw it as a reflection of someone who had learned that genuine worth never depended upon appearance. One afternoon, while standing near the same Manhattan intersection where everything had quietly begun months earlier, Ethan noticed the familiar traffic light turn red. Through the windshield, he watched pedestrians crossing the street, each carrying different dreams, different worries, and different destinations. Beside him, Nia smiled as she recognized the corner where their paths had unknowingly crossed for the first time. Neither of them spoke for a few moments. They simply appreciated how one ordinary morning had changed two lives without either person realizing it. Ethan finally admitted that if he had judged her only by the clothing she wore that day, he would have missed meeting one of the most remarkable people he had ever known. Nia answered with the same gentle wisdom that had guided her for years. She said that every person deserved to be seen for the kindness they carried rather than the image they presented to the world. As the light turned green, the car moved forward once again, but this time neither of them was traveling alone. Ahead of them waited new classrooms, new entrepreneurs, new families searching for opportunity, and countless strangers whose futures had not yet been written. The city skyline shimmered beneath the afternoon sun, reminding them that success was never measured by the height of a building or the size of a fortune. It was measured by the number of lives forever changed because one person chose to see beyond appearances, and another never allowed the opinions of the world to diminish the quiet strength of her true character.